Hey everybody, this is Erika.
And this is Tina.
And we are A92A. A92A stands for ages 9 to adult. That's how long we've been on this journey together as friends.
92 is also our high school graduation year.
And ages 9 to adult is the nod to the board game life, which we rockified as kids in order to live out our rock and roll fantasies. Thank you everyone for tuning in. You know it's a big day if we have video, by the way.
I know.
Video today. It's special guest day, Tina, and it's not just one guest, it's two guests. I am delighted to introduce that with us today, we have the incomparable Tony Higbee, guitarist of the Tom Keifer Band, and the effervescent Ace Von Johnson, guitarist for the band LA Guns. Thank you so much, guys, for joining us on the podcast today.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, thank you for having us.
And we also have a dog. Let's not forget the dog in the background.
Lila down here. She'll probably pop in and out. Apologies in advance.
Oh, no worries. We're pet lovers here. All right, guys. Well, let's just jump right in. I got questions for both of you. We can't wait to get started. Let's start out with this. You both joined up with artists who already had a very established following. Tony with Tom Keifer, Ace with LA Guns. What were those first few weeks like the first few performances? Did you guys all click right away? Was there an adjustment period? And what about fan reaction as well?
I'll let you go first.
Lord. It was pretty effortless, to be honest. I think mostly because I'd been on stage with, I think, everyone in the band in that current incarnation of LA Guns at one point or another. I mean, I had played with Johnny Martin, the bass player, a few times, and jammed with Tracy as friends. And we'd known each other for at least 10 years prior. And I'd been on stage with Phil Lewis's previous incarnation of the band at least 7 or 8 times, just sort of as a guest, I'll jump up for rip and tear and that kind of thing. And so I think leading up to it with my 10 years of time with Faster Pussycat, I think the fan base kind of was already sort of aware of my presence. And so it was a pretty seamless transition, And it was great. The fan reaction was, pretty much what I expected. I think there was some pushback with not the previous guy prior to me, but one of the guys before that who will remain nameless, still sort of creeping through. And obviously that I had no control over that. So sitting through that, I dealt with that sort of scenario before, but otherwise it was great. And ultimately it was like joining a band full of guys I was already friends with for, 7, 8, 10, in Johnny's instance, 15 years. So it was pretty easy.
Yeah. In my case, it was more of a, it wasn't that I was stepping into a band that already existed. I mean, everybody knew who Tom was, but he was venturing out on a career doing a solo thing. And honestly, when I took the gig, I thought it was going to be, 2 or 3 runs of shows, maybe 2 to 3 months worth of work. I figured it'd last a year. And then, like most artists in his position, I put out a solo record. I went out and I supported it. And then when it's over with, I go back to my other thing, which in his case, obviously was Cinderella, because it's a, very lucrative, thing in comparison. So I didn't really have the only pressures I had on me stepping into that role, it wasn't that one band. Well, I guess in a lot of people's eyes, one band maybe was getting compared to the other, but I didn't really look at it like that. I kind of looked at it as its own thing. And when we first went out and started playing, we were doing smaller rooms, and we were doing, a way different looking set. It was, like 5 songs off the solo record, and then Cinderella cuts mixed in. But some of those songs we were doing different versions of them, like we were doing like a blues acoustic version of "Shake Me," or we were doing songs that Cinderella never played live, like one for rock and roll and stuff like that. And I mean, the first year we were on tour, we didn't even play Nobody's Fool. Like that wasn't even in the set.
Wow.
And so it was just kind of viewed as a different thing. And then suddenly we're doing a second year, and then suddenly we're doing a third year. And then, as that starts to happen and the shows start getting bigger, and then we start doing festivals and stuff like that, then it kind of starts to morph into what it is now, which is, if you come see us, there's 2 solo records and we're doing, I don't know, probably 4 songs between those records. But the lion's share of the set, if we're being honest, is a lot of those classic Cinderella songs, which Tom wrote and sang. So, it's kind of evolved into what it's turned into now. But to begin with, I didn't feel any pressure of stepping into an existing band, because at the time the band didn't really exist. It was a new thing. Right. A little different than what he had to do, which was slide into something that, right. An established name with a preconceived notion and this, that, and the other. I mean, I felt pressure, but it was more of a pressure of wanting to just get there and do a good job. And also, when I started playing with Tom, one of my biggest supporters was Jeff LaBar.
Yeah.
And that was, that meant a lot, because he was just super pat me on the back and killer job, and came out to a couple shows. And, Jeff was in a really good place at that time, health-wise and stuff like that. He was sober at the time. And it was really, really good. And that actually helped a lot, because I didn't feel, when the other guy that had been there forever gives you the pat on the back, says, "Mate, you're doing a great job. You're killing it. Keep doing what you're doing." That makes you feel quite a bit better.
Did you ever talk to Jeff about, some of the rearrangement of these classic songs? Did you ever sort of consult with him, or, show him some things and ask him his feedback?
No, I didn't really have to. I will say that I think if I would have asked Jeff a question, if I would have had a question about something, I would have asked Jeff. He'd have been eager to answer, and be happy to help, because that's just kind of how he was with me. And it was super cool. But, that stuff, if there was any rearrangement of anything classic going on in there, that generally was that was generally Tom giving me instructions.
Sure.
To a point, saying, do this, make it your own, and blah, blah, blah. But here's the arrangement, and, go from there.
That's such a perfect segue into what my next question for you is going to be, because we chatted with bass player Luis Bayat a couple of months ago, who played last summer on the Sonic Slam tour. He said Tom was very collaborative about how to play some of the Cinderella legacy tunes, and he didn't necessarily want them to always sound exactly the same as they sounded in 1987. How has that process been for you, including the production of all of this new material that you guys have put together? Do you kind of, what's Tom like to work with?
Well, in regards to the older material, Tom's very, I think, in some instances, he's definitely pushes you to, hey, feel like you can do your own thing here. We actually, as a bonus track for the deluxe edition of the first solo album, The Way Life Goes, we actually recut Nobody's Fool, and he duetted it with Lizzie Hale. And it turned out super cool. But there was production tweaks and stuff like that. We were working with producer Vance Powell in Nashville. We cut those in Vance, is known for doing the Raconteurs and Jack White and Clutch and a lot of, current active rock artists. And, he'd had some thoughts on the arrangement, stuff like that. One of the things we did was we actually shortened the guitar solo ever so slightly. And it's a trade-off between those two. And then when we got to that point, Tom looked at me and said, do your own solo here. Don't do what Jeff was doing, make it your own thing. So, little stuff like that. But there's also things too that I think are just important. They're key. There's songs like Coming Home, that guitar solo, you can whistle it. It's very signature. It's very melodic. And it's a great moment as far as what Jeff did with Cinderella. And I don't ever want to step on that or mess with it. I feel like there's certain things you have to make sure that you honor and play correctly, because it's important to the song, just as important as any other part.
Yeah.
And, Tom's great with that. And, we'll have those discussions when the time arises. I try to keep stuff pretty true to the original, but there's definitely, over time you play something enough and you kind of start to put your own stamp on it, whether you even realize you're doing it or not. Yeah. And then,
do you have a favorite Cinderella song to perform live?
Man, I don't know. That's tough. I haven't really thought about that. I really enjoy doing Falling Apart at the Seams. That's a great song. That was always one of my favorite Cinderella songs when I was growing up in the Midwest.
Wait, were you growing up in Nebraska?
No, I was growing up in the cornfields of Illinois.
Oh, close.
It it was not far removed. And I also graduated in 92, by the way. So.
Oh, yay.
Right.
Oh my gosh, you're perfect for this podcast.
Kind of. I should be. I could come on and be like your third wheel.
You absolutely.
You should.
You absolutely could. All right, Ace, this one's for you. When we interviewed LA Guns lead singer Phil Lewis last month, he said he really pushed hard to get you into the band and that it took some time because you were busy with other projects and had other commitments. But he's obviously a big fan of yours. How do you feel that your style of playing has amped up the LA Gun sound? Because I certainly feel that it has. And then what's that collaboration process like? Because you guys have been releasing so much new music.
Oh, wow. Well, I will say this out of the gate. I love Phil. We were just talking about some band stuff right before we came on here. And I was talking with a friend of mine last night who's also a career musician. We were talking about our singers. And I said, well, it's such a relief for me to have someone like Phil, sort of up front in the cockpit, if you will, because he's such a diplomatic, easy to work with. He's not out of control. He's just kind of down to earth and a sweet guy. And he's full of these amazing stories from England in the late 70s, which is its own whole thing. Yeah. But coming into LA Guns, I think that might have stemmed from us jamming together a few times, like I mentioned a minute ago, getting on stage, just as like the, camaraderie kind of thing. Between Monsters of Rock shows and, during my time with Faster Pussycat, like the, shows at the Whiskey Together and all, the typical Hollywood nonsense. And I'm assuming it kind of stemmed from that. And they had approached me, I'm going to say 4 times before I finally was willing to kind of sort of step into that role. Mostly because, as you mentioned, some scheduling stuff. And then also I was I didn't want to step on anyone's toes. Like, hey, we just fired this guy. Can you come in? And I was like, well, I know that guy and I don't want to, I'm not trying to take food off of his plate. So maybe it's not really a good time right now. And also there was a little bit of a hesitation on my part because I had spent at the time well over 9 years with Faster Pussycat, and was sort of the analogy I made was I said, even though I'm in this unhappy marriage, I said, I don't really know that I want to cheat on my partner with this other, with this young supermodel kind of gig. And so what a horrible analogy, but that's how I felt. I was like, yeah, I've been with this band, these guys with Pussycat for a fucking decade. And I was at the time kind of, as he knows, burnt out on that for a multitude of reasons. And it worked out to the point where there was some stuff going on in my personal life, and I had the window open, and I was like, yeah, just keep me on the road. And I went out and I took the Guns gig, and I kind of never looked back. And I did both for roughly a year, maybe 9-10 months. And then at a certain point I had to pick one, and clearly the decision is somewhat obvious now. But, I'm proud of my time with that thing, but that's not what the question was. But I think both, and it applies to both camps. I come from a punk rock background, sort of, if you will. My pedigree is punk rock all over the place. I mean, whether it's Murphy's Law from New York City or the U.S. Bombs, Orange County Band, backing up Sylvain from the New York Dolls, et cetera, et cetera. I'm sure there's a bunch of other stuff I just can't think of. But and I like to bring that sort of influence or energy into what I'm doing. And, Tracy and I were talking about that maybe last year on the tour together, talking about Mick Cripps and that role, and sort of and this also applies to Pussycat, but that the early era was this sort of cross section of guys where, for perfect example, like the first LA Guns record, the drummer on the whole thing is a guy named Nicky Beat. And Nicky Beat was in the Germs and the Weirdos and the Cramps and the Gun Club, all these famous LA punk bands that I love. And so, obviously sonically you think of LA Guns or whoever as these sort of, I don't want to say hair metal, but like 80s hard rock or whatever. But there was this element of punk rock is what made the sort of Sunset Strip sleazy. You've got bands like the Joneses and the Mau Mau's and the Jet Boy, singer with a mohawk, and Junkyard with Brian Baker from Minor Threat. who's now in Bad Religion, Faster Pussycat. I mean, Tammy had a punk band called the Bondage Boys. Tracy, I mentioned, with the drummer and all these things. And one of Tracy's favorite bands is the Germs. And so there's this sort of weird unspoken cross section of like, well, we're punk rockers, but we grew our hair kind of long and now we're wearing cowboy boots. So I'd like to think that like part of my backstory lends itself to that and then carries through in the writing. It's funny because whenever we put out a new album in my tenure here, people go, oh, this song's really, there's this punky song on here that must be yours. And I'm actually going, no, those aren't mine. Those are Johnny Martin's. And who also comes from a punk rock pedigree, if you will, or whatever you want to call it, background. And I like that. I like that I'm kind of keeping that sort of like dirty, sleazy, not sleazy, but let's call it what it is, that element rather than like, a polished, because there were some bands of that era. I wouldn't say Cinderella because I think they were way too bluesy and not sleek. But like there were some bands, I'm not going to throw anyone under the bus, maybe like a Nelson or something like that. There's none of that vibe where it's a little more like, dirt under your fingernails and, it smells like cigarettes and whiskey. And I think that's the sort of street cred I'm walking into the room with.
Yeah. And I think to what he just said too, LA Guns, clearly an LA band, LA Guns isn't from Omaha. You know what I mean? And those influences and the surroundings and what they were doing, that all, it's right there on paper. I mean, LA Guns, a lot of people say, oh, Guns N' Roses this, Guns N' Roses that. And a lot of people aren't even aware that Tracy is the Guns and Guns N' Roses. And, LA Guns to me is almost the precursor to that. They weren't a band. Now, Cinderella, on the other hand, to be fair, that first album cover doesn't look like that record sounds.
Correct.
Yeah.
I avoided it for a long time because I was like, oh, I like these songs, but they look like that.
Yeah, and a lot of people say that. Yeah. And, I think it was just a product of the times. But I think, Cinderella comes from that background of Tom loves Zeppelin and Tom loves Humble Pie and Tom loves, just a lot of that stuff and those guys and their influences. But, also there's an appreciation for that early 70s glam rock scene.
Yeah, for sure.
And that was really starting to come up around that time. And that was like, you dress like that in 1986 or 85 or whatever it was, you were really making a statement. It was a little more, that look was definitely way more outside the box in 85 or 86 than it was by 1989. In 1989, it was like,
they were kind of like an East Coast band, and they kind of came through the ranks with like the Bon Jovis of the world.
Exactly.
And that was a little bit more polished. And so when you're coming through like that sort of tunnel, you're going to probably take on that look a little bit. But certainly Cinderella's second album was a huge diversion from their first album. I thought it was very bluesy.
Absolutely. And it was Cinderella.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, what's that?
Yeah. No, compared to their first album, it was very
Yeah, absolutely. With Cinderella and with LA Guns, there's this handful of bands that I always cite that if you strip away the image completely and you just listen to the music, and then you were to make those albums using the production of the time, instead of 1986, 87, in 1978 or in 1994, like Cinderella, if you listen to Night Songs and you don't look at the album cover, and if you were to take that production and have Mutt Lange make that record in 1979, it's going to sound like AC/DC.
Yeah.
If you have the same production in 1994, it's going to sound current to that time. There's just really great rock songs. Same with LA Guns. Same with Tesla. Same with, Guns N' Roses, obviously. But I think it's just, there are certain bands that I think transcended the genre.
Yeah.
And then, there's other bands that really embraced everything that was happening then. Poison's always going to sound like Poison. And Poison was the perfect band for that time when they came out.
Yeah. Agreed.
I don't think Poison translates in 1994, no matter how you wrap it. But in 1986, they were perfect.
They were. So we've been talking about geography a little bit, and I'm curious because, AC, you've moved out of Los Angeles, and now you guys are, you're settled in Nashville. How is that influencing your music now, being where you are now versus maybe being in LA still?
It's not. I mean, I'm an Angelino. I was born and raised second generation. Like what's left of my family's still mostly out there, and I remember being a little boy in the 80s and being in like a strip mall and waiting for my mom to come out from something, and she came back in the car, and she goes, and I saw these tattooed guys, and I was like, "Oh, that's interesting." And she goes, "You know who that was?" And I was like, "I don't know. I'm 6. What do you want?" She goes, "That's Motley Crue. That was Tommy Lee." And I was like, "Oh." And then in hindsight, I was always like, how did my mom know? I'm getting way off topic. Who Motley Crue was, but she had worked at a place called Jack's in the Valley. It was kind of like the Rainbow North. So she was familiar with a lot of this stuff, even though she didn't listen to music. But getting back on topic, it really hasn't changed much other than geographically speaking. I'm using that. I'm not in LA anymore. And it was mostly, I got burnt out on, I'm not going to even lie. I just got burnt out on the people out there. It seems like there's this constant, and I'm sure this is since the 60s or even earlier, this constant influx of people that are out, that are like moving out there, that are, hustling and bustling and looking for opportunity. And that's great. I mean, it's LA, it's its own universe. But I got tired of every social event was like hey, who are you and what can you do for me? That vibe. And that is Hollywood in the music industry to a T, at least in my 20 plus years experience. And then the pandemic, and let's avoid all that. But I was paying an arm and a leg for this tiny 1-bedroom apartment. And I just felt like, every time, he's heard this story ad nauseum, but every time I'd come through Nashville, I'd be like, "What are you doing here?" And said, "I moved here." And I started looking at places, and I was like, wow, I could have my own house for less than I'm paying for this apartment. So I made the jump. But yeah, so now we're neighbors. But it doesn't really affect my music. It's not like all of a sudden I was like, well, I got a pedal steel and I picked up a twang, and now I'm just writing some Luke Bryan songs and changing the whole direction of things. Nothing, really, nothing. I mean, I'm in LA every 60 to 90 days for work anyhow.
Sure.
And, people are like, "Do you miss it?" And I'm like, "Why would I miss it? I'll be there in 4 weeks."
Right.
So no, sorry to go the long way on that question, but yeah, that's kind of it. Nothing's really changed.
Yeah. I can't say that it really, I moved here to join a band. I tell people this all the time. I left Illinois to get out of the Midwest.
Sure.
I grew up here. I didn't want to be there anymore. I grew up in a small town and around the same small town, within a 7-mile radius. Went to college there. And I've got a lot of wonderful, friends there still. And I like occasionally going back and seeing them and seeing family and stuff like that. But I was ready to get out of there before I was even out of high school. So when I was getting ready to leave college, I'd been to LA. It didn't necessarily appeal to me. It wasn't that it wasn't cool and that there weren't some great people out there, but kind of to what he said, I remember thinking to myself the first time I visited LA, it was really weird because I felt like whenever I met somebody, I wasn't just, "Hey, how you doing? I'm so-and-so. Oh, I'm so-and-so." It was, "Hey, how you doing? Oh, I'm so-and-so. And let me tell you my resume."
Yeah.
Like it was really kind of strange, but the thing was, it wasn't a malicious thing or anything weird like that. I think it's just so ingrained in the social circles out there that because everybody's trying to get in and get out there and get ahead, that, that's just after a while, I think it's just kind of what people morph into when they've been out there for a while. And that's how you feel like you have to present yourself. And I just wasn't wired to necessarily thrive there.
Yeah.
But I wanted to go somewhere where there was a good rock scene. I wanted to play music for a living, and I looked at a map and I looked at where my family was living at the time, which was consisted of my mother, my stepfather, my brother and sister. They were in Mississippi, and I knew I didn't want to go through another winter again.
Yeah.
So I actually went to
a long cold winter.
Yes, a long cold winter. And so I went to Atlanta. At the time, you got to figure it was early 2000. The rock scene there was blowing up. There was the Marvelous Three. There was Seven Dust. There was Injected. There were all these bands coming out of there. Double Drive. And I'd never been to Atlanta. I didn't know anybody there. And I just was like, that's where I'm going to go. And I moved there, and it was the best thing I ever did for myself. I was there for 3 years. And then after the bands I was in dissolved there and the rock scene kind of started to get weird, I got asked to join a band in Nashville. And I moved here in 2003 to join this band that lasted a couple years with some good friends. And as that band started to fizzle, I stayed because the night that I moved here, I actually met my future ex-wife. And that kept me here for, the first 15 years. And by that point, I just by chance gotten into Nashville ahead of the curve. When I moved here, there was like 4 rock bands, maybe 5. And everything else was country. It was a very small community, very tight knit. We all knew each other. And I got in early and established some sort of credibility here as a rock musician, so that when other people started showing up, I was kind of already entrenched in it.
Yeah.
And then the scene kind of exploded like it has. And I just happened to get here ahead of the curve.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. It's so good that we can do that now. Like, you can really live anywhere and still pursue your career, do your stuff. And, Ace, you even have other passions outside of music. You are a voice actor as well. I'd love to hear a little bit about what brought you into that and why you like that. And then Tony, I'd love to hear just what are your passions outside of the realm of music too?
Lord. Well, it was a rainy December day, and I just from I think middle school on, the often heard statement was, "Oh, what a lovely voice you've got," and my mom used to always pester me. She's like, you should be on the radio," as if like I was like, "Sure, yeah, just let me make a call." And, WKPBX, up next, nonstop block of rock with Tony Higbee. And I started pursuing it. I started pursuing it casually I'm 40 now. So maybe in my mid to late 20s, 26, 27-ish, took some, workshops and classes and studied under a few people that were professionals, and I got into some good scenarios where I was really sort of, like LA typical BS, like hobnobbing with the right people. Like, this guy's the producer at Hanna-Barbera, and all this stuff. And, I book a couple things here or there. I had an agent in Beverly Hills for like all of 5 minutes that sent me to read for all this huge stuff. And I was so green because by that point I was just entrenched in being a career musician. And, I remember walking and she goes, "Okay, so today you're reading for Maserati and the pay is 65. And I was like, 65 what? And she goes, 65. And I was like, 65 what? And she goes, the job is 60. If you book, it's $65,000. And I was like, to read this 45-second piece of paper, you're going to pay me $65,000? And she was like, yeah. And that was exactly why I didn't book it.
Yeah.
But I just was like green. But it was really great. And I've done a lot of really fun things over the years. I probably book, one thing a month. It's not really like my main job, obviously, or source of income, clearly. But I love doing it. I'd love to do more. I constantly it's mostly through nepotism, if you will. So someone will be like, "Hey man, I'm a big fan of the band. I heard you do VO. I've got a dentist business. Can you do this piece?" I sent you the thing in the group. I just did something this week that I'm still waiting to hear back on for this big country music thing. And the guy's like, "I think we're going to hire you. We want you to be the spokesperson." And it's a friend. The guy used to be a tour manager. And I was like, I'm not supposed to say what it is, but it's like a household name guy opening a music venue, and the debut launch is probably the most household name female country artist of all time.
Got
right.
It.
And he goes, "That's your first gig." And it's like, okay, cool. So, I just like it because it lets me be creative. And he was like, "Well, I need you to do it. I want your speaking voice, but I want a little bit of a drawl." And I was like, because it's Nashville.
Because it's Nashville.
It's Tennessee. So I was like, "Well, I can do a little bit of a draw." I said, "How much of a draw do you want?" I was like, "Do you want me to go down to Cracker Barrel, or you want me to stay here and keep it a little, and I went through this whole sweep on the phone with this guy, and his name, I'm not going to say his name. Even his name's Buck, so like, I was like, "All right, Buck, well, how much of an accent would you like?" And my dream ultimately is I want to do animation stuff. Yeah. And I spent 6 hours the beginning of last month in the Bay Area with a good friend of mine, who's this huge. I think he's the producer, the main guy at Pixar. His name's Jonas, and we've been friends for. My name is Jonas, and we've been friends for 5, 6, 7 years. And he's always threatened to give me tours of the studio when I'm ever in the Bay Area. And I finally made it up there for work, and I got my tour. And he was kind enough to set up a meeting with their head of casting. And so I sat down with this woman, and kind of like this. It was, Jonas and my friend who I was staying with for the weekend, and this woman and a couple other people. And and I was like, well, fucking working with Tammy, blah. And she's like, my wheels are already turning. And so there's always some irons in the fire with that thing. And just like the music industry, people will call you and be like, hey, do you want to be in Metallica? And you're like, yeah. And they're like, we'll call you back. And then you're like, am I going to get a call back? Is someone going to call? Am I in Metallica? And then so it's a lot of that. And in the meantime, I just drum up, the dentist guy or whoever. I had a client for a long time that was doing a book on the John DeLorean motor, the DMC, the DeLorean Motor Company. And I think I did probably 6 or 7 jobs for this guy. And I was like, dude, you got to let me do a thing as, Dr. Emmett Brown, Marty, it's your car. We've got a coffee table coming out. It's your kids, Marty, this whole thing. And he was like, no, he's a European guy. He was like, no, I don't want to do, no. And finally on the last job, I went into this whole rant at the end. It's like, if you're looking for a book, you got to go to this website. And it was dumb, but he ended up using just a snippet of it on some YouTube clip. And I was like, see, I'm being an artist. But yeah, you asked. And of course, I went for too much coffee here. But it's something I enjoy doing. And ultimately, my dream is to do animation. So Jonas, if you're watching this or listening to this, hit me up, bro.
I actually work in entertainment, and I got a lot of friends in animation too. So I'll throw the word out there too for you.
Please.
That's how this works in Los Angeles.
That's how it works.
Of course. Who are you, and what can you do for me? All right. And I do, of course. I've got my animation reel and all this stuff, which is super outdated. It's still from when I was in my 20s. But at the tip, I'll play for people. They're like, which of the voices talking are you? And I'm like, they're all me. They're like, they're all you? And I'm like, yes, those are all the voices going on inside my head simultaneously. Trust me.
I also work in movie trailers. So I think you have a good movie trailer voice.
Yeah, movie trailers.
And that's lucrative.
In a world where Tony Higbee has to go on tour. Yeah. Well, have your people call my people or whatever. Yeah.
So what was the question?
Ran, I'm sorry.
Oh, you're fine. I forgot.
Passions outside of music. What do you like to do, Tony?
Passions outside of music. I'll dance around a few things real quick. Golf.
Excellent golf.
No, not an excellent golfer.
Compared to me.
But yes. But me and the drummer in the Tom Keifer Band, we actually keep our clubs under the bus. They have their own road cases, and we play golf on the road whenever we can. And it's great because it's literally, I feel like I'm so entrenched in music 24/7. Even when I'm not playing, it won't shut off up here. For whatever reason, I get on a golf course and it shuts off, and I relax. And it's, I get out and get an exercise. I'm out in the sun, and it's just healthy, and it just, everything about it just relaxes me. It's just a win-win. Mm-hmm. So yeah, there's that, and that's, definitely more of a recreation, but there's some passion in there too. Dog rescue and animal rescue in general, which I know Ace is in that same boat. Me and my girlfriend Tiffany, we've been together now for, coming up on 3 years pretty soon. It's crazy. So, it's weird because we actually started dating in a very stereotypical fashion through meeting each other online during the pandemic. But yeah, right. How else do you? I literally, when people say, "How do you guys meet?" I'm like, "Well, buckle up, because this is about to be the most cheesy. Are you kidding me?" story ever. But I won't even get into that. But regardless, we both love animals. I had a couple of rescue cats when we started dating, and she actually had a couple of rescue chihuahuas and 3 cats. I was only originally told about 2 cats because one of her good friends, Paul Gargano, who's the runs the Ledge, told her, can't tell him you have 3 cats, or he's going to think you're a crazy cat lady and he won't want to date you. So months in us talking and seeing each other, she confessed to me that she had a 3rd cat. She was very scared to do so at that moment. Anyway, so when she moved here, we Brady bunched all of our pets together to a small zoo. So we had 2 dogs and 4 cats. No, 5 cats. Attrition is taking a couple of cats out because every animal in that house pretty much is a senior. Anyways, blah, 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 blah. We have a foster dog right now. We've rescued a 3rd Chihuahua out of the East Valley shelter in LA that was on a euthanization list. Yeah. And she's the sweetest dog in the history of dogs. We were just going to foster her. And within 2 weeks, I looked at Tiffany and realized that we were keeping this dog.
Foster fail. Yeah.
Yeah. Total foster fail. And then so we're really into that. And we enjoy that quite a bit. I mean, honestly, I'm pretty entrenched in music. And I think a lot of it comes from just being obsessed with music from the time I can even remember, being alive, quite frankly. And I play with, Tom Keifer. And when I'm not busy with Tom, I play in another rock band from the 90s called Brother Kane with Damon Johnson, who's a dear friend of mine. And Damon, I started off playing in solo bands with him. And then, he put Brother Kane back together, which is kind of what he was most known for. But he's also playing in Leonard Skinner now. He took the place for the late Gary Rossington, and which is great because our schedules overlap during the summer, me with Keifer, him with Skinner, and then we get done, and it's like, okay, cool, let's go play some Brother Kane shows for a couple months. And I'm just pretty heavy into that. Oh, and then of course, record collecting, which quite frankly has been a bit of an issue for both of us. And by issue, I mean
it's his fault.
He blames me, but I think he might actually have more albums than me now. And I'm pretty sure I have at least 1,300 albums.
I'm at 12 plus. You can't really see it. There's an entire wall behind me that goes behind where we're seated and into the closet. It's now transcended into the closet as well. So
it can be an expensive habit, right?
It is. It's why I'm broke all the time. And the dogs.
Yeah. I gotta be honest. The pets, the senior pets will break you as quick as anything.
I know.
But, I mean, me and Tiffany were having a conversation the other day about how we feel like she feels like every day she's spending $50 on something.
Yeah.
Involving the animals, and it just adds up.
I've got 3 here. I've got 3 pit bull mix type dogs or whatever you'd like to call them. And 2 are seniors, and one of them alone, his monthly stipend is over $600. So in medication and specialized food and all this stuff, and so I'm frequently I have a Patreon that I spend a lot of time on, and I'm constantly like, hey, if anyone wants to send me a Chewy gift certificate this month, with a rule because his Pancra Plus meds are bankrupting me, but wouldn't trade them for the world.
I mean, and that's the thing, you love them and you get to know them, and they're your family.
Yeah.
We've got a cat at the house that
Penelope.
Oh yeah,
I knew it.
Her name's Penelope. Probably a year before Tiffany and I started talking, she went into kidney failure. Oh. Her retinas detached and she went blind. She should have died. Tiffany took her to the vet, and they kept her there one last night to see if they could get her to rally, and lo and behold, she did. But she's had to have fluids every day since. They gave her 5 to 6 months after that. By fluids, I mean you got to give an IV. Yeah. You got to stick a needle under their coat and give her 100 milliliters of fluids every day because her kidneys aren't working. They gave her 5 to 6 months. That was roughly 4 years ago.
Wow.
And so she gets fluids every day still. She's on a blood pressure medication and some sort of a flora like thing for her GI.
Right.
It's mixed in with her food, and she runs the house.
Yeah.
She runs it. I want food. I'm going to go sit out here and scream until you bring me food. I want attention. I'm going to sit in the living room and scream until somebody comes and gives me attention. You guys aren't out of bed yet. I'm going to sit in the living room and scream until I wake the 18-year-old foster dog up to get her to start barking to get you out of bed at 6:30 a.m. so you will come feed me. Like that's, but I mean,
yeah.
it's ridiculous, but she's hilarious. We love her, and it is what it is.
She's a good cat.
Yeah. But she runs the house.
Yeah, I have got a house full of cats too. There's 4 of them, and we always sort of replace the ones who have to leave us. And we've had a few live well into their 20s. You make the commitment. You do what you got to do to make sure they're happy.
I got one that's going to turn 19 in September.
Yeah.
So, and I think the youngest cat in the house is Penelope, and she's 14.
Yeah.
Wow.
Oh. I only have 1 10-month puppy, so I feel like I have the easiest path of any of you.
Right.
I don't envy the puppy. I have a puppy. I have 2 seniors and a puppy also, and I know how much of a terrorist they can be.
Yes, puppy years are difficult. Yes, agree.
We're Erika, we're coming up a little bit on time crunch. So do you want to, should we just kind of skip forward and talk about what's happening with you guys right now?
Yeah. We don't want to keep you guys all day. Although I feel like we could keep you guys all day. You guys are super interesting to talk to.
Well, we can always follow up with a part 2 in another.
Oh, the part 2.
Let's do it.
A sequel.
The sequel.
Yes. Ace and Tony 2 Electric.
Ace and Tony 2. And of course we have Tony, our third wheel, the other 92 graduate. Ace, you're too young for us. I'm sorry.
Sorry about that. I'm a millennial, believe it or not. I'm class of 01.
That's crazy.
I don't know that you fit in with us Gen Xers.
Sorry. I'm an old soul.
That's right.
We're just the right age though, because we love and appreciate the music that I'm fortunate enough to get to play.
Yeah.
We're just young enough that there's no damning photos that involve spandex, hairspray, or anything like that.
So true.
No kidding.
And luckily, by the time I was old enough to be able to go out and start playing gigs, everybody was at most wearing denim and black T-shirts and was a Megadeth. Or grunge was creeping in. I'm not going to lie and say there aren't any incriminating
grunge photos,
flannel grunge photos of me that may involve shorts and Doc Martens.
Wow.
Oh
nice.
Yeah. Oh
nice.
Yeah, exactly. But hey, what are you gonna do? I'd stand up there and sing the shit out of Outshine if you let me.
That's right. Well, you guys are headed back out on the road together this summer with several dates together on the Live Loud tour, and you spent quite a bit of time last summer together on the Sonic Slam tour. So I would assume that this is kind of like a reunion with friends at this point, right?
Oh,
What are you guys most looking forward to about your summer tour plans? And also, why is Omaha on July 19th the stop you're most excited about?
Well, I mean, I think it goes without saying the reason the Omaha date is the date that we're the most excited about is because you guys are going to be there.
That's right. That's right.
Well, I won't, sadly.
I will be. You guys are playing my building, Steelhouse, which is a brand new building. You guys will love it. But you will be there July 19th. But tell us about the tour. Are you guys really excited about it? What are you most looking forward to?
Well, we always get excited because we can hang out with each other.
Yeah.
I mean, it's funny. I live a mile up the street. We don't hang out as much as we should. We've had this conversation repeatedly in the last few weeks like, why is it so hard for us to get together and go get sushi? Like it's kind of silly, but our schedules have just been kind of chaotic.
Yeah. Well, he's prepping for tour. I'm prepping for tour. When I'm leading up to one, I don't really, the last thing I want to do before I'm forced to go out every day for work is to go out at all. So I sort of, barricade myself in here with the dogs for the month or two leading up to. Yeah. But I mean, I'm looking forward to getting out and just getting on stage and seeing not just the guys in the Keifer Band, but just friends, across the states. You only get to see when you're touring through, they're touring through, or you're touring through town, et cetera, et cetera. Yeah. But looking forward to the Omaha show is one of the 3 that we know of dates together this summer, because they're on their own respective tour and we're on our own respective tour. Yeah. And so we're sort of going in this sort of thing, and we sort of cross pollinate in Omaha.
That's right. That's right. Well, we're looking
highlight.
Well, yeah, and the thing is,
I saw your tour last summer in Dallas, and then we just saw LA Guns, the Whiskey, when you guys did your record release party in April, and I were at that show. So we've seen you guys perform a few times here over the course of the last year. So I know I'm very excited for it. It'll be a great show.
Awesome, glad to hear it. Well, listen, we're looking forward to getting out and seeing you guys, and that's the thing with LA Guns. I think LA Guns and the Tom Keifer Band is just a package that goes really well together.
Yeah,
we both really enjoy each other's music, and we really enjoy each other's company. Yeah. And respect each other. And it goes a long ways on the road if you're really jiving with your tour mates. It just makes the tour feel less like work and more like vacation.
Sure. Well, for everybody listening out there, definitely catch this tour, catch LA Guns, catch Tom Keifer Band as you guys are out this summer. Thank you guys so much for joining us. You've been such a pleasure to talk to. Be sure to follow both bands on Instagram. Find the Tom Keifer Band at Tom Keifer Official and LA Guns at LA Guns. And see the tour this summer. It's phenomenal. This is kind of the point where we have a little listener call out section. Tell us if you're going to see the Live Loud tour this summer and what songs you're most looking forward to seeing live. I'm always a big fan of Shake Me and Electric Gypsy. Those are my songs. So
I'm suspecting you've got a good shot at seeing both.
Yay.
Yeah. I think so.
Amazing. You can follow us and interact with us on our website, www.a92a.life, on Instagram at a92a_life, or check out our Facebook page, A92A. And in the meantime, keep ratting those bangs and banging those heads. Thank you guys for joining us. It was so fun.
Thank you, ladies. Thanks for having us.
Thanks, guys.
See ya.
Have a good one.